Okay, guys, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see so many faces here, as with all our events this conference, in fact. It's not often we get a genuine superstar of the political world
and since
here
you
at
couldn't
CPS
get one,
and
you got
CapX.
me.
Sorry?
Since you couldn't get one, you got me.
Ah, yes. And humorist. Frank, needs little introduction, but we'll have a brief synopsis of his career so far. Frank has worked on elections the world over. He's worked in the White House. He's worked for several Fortune 500 companies in the States, and he's written 3 New York Times best-selling books. He's an expert on polling and the language of politics and how to communicate with voters. He's also been a visiting fellow here at the CPS last year doing his What Britain Thinks mega polling project, which was an extremely insightful guide to how to communicate with British voters, their values and priorities. And anyone who was here for our event yesterday will know that he is both an extremely entertaining speaker and an expert at crowd management.
Is there an empty chair
No.
next to anyone?
No.
You
We
got an
have the
empty
opposite
chair?
problem.
You got a chair right there.
Okay.
By the way, this is your party treasurer right there. If anyone deserves, it's like I'd get an entire row to get up just to seat him.
Well, we've spent much of this conference so far talking about a rather gloomy prognosis for the British economy and a difficult situation for the Conservative Party. But we are going to cross the pond today and discuss Frank's homeland, the United States of America, with the somewhatly provocative title of this event, which is America Doomed? Frank, yesterday in our event, you said that Joe Biden had it much worse than Liz Truss. Can you just set the scene for us? Why do you think that is? What are the challenges facing the president? Do you think he has the faintest hope of solving them?
Well, I have to be very careful because Jerry Baker's sitting right there from the Wall Street Journal, and so everything I say can and will be used against me. I do have to go back to the States. I have to pass through customs, and I don't feel like I'm told that I will suffer a proctology exam if I'm not nice enough about the U.S., but I want to do this. I'm going to start right there, and you guys up there are going to get a chance to do this. I want a word or phrase to describe the United States of America. One word or phrase. We'll start with you. By the way, if I was doing this focus group on TV, you guys would have screwed me right now. They would have gone to some other programming. Does anyone up there, what word or phrase to describe the United States of America?
Divided.
No, not you. Go ahead.
Divided. Right.
What'd you say? Okay, I want on record that I was not the first person to use the F word. Okay, I think we're in real trouble, and the reason why I think we're in real trouble is the numbers that just came out a couple days ago from a YouGov poll. It's your own survey, where they ask Americans, should candidates accept the results of the election if they lost, if the candidate you supported lost? For the first time ever, 46% of Americans would now say that their candidate should not accept those results. 46%, half of the country. It is not just Donald Trump, although he's a major, major cause of this, but it's happening on the left and on the right. And I say this to you as a warning. Please, I want to move here. I was told by my friends in Washington, don't say this, it's going to get you into trouble. I know that I've got a reporter right there. I went to your queue for your queen. I went every single night. And in every night, I saw people respectful, dignified, lovers of their country. They looked every shape and every form in every part of the country. Some of them spoke English in a way that I did not understand. I was later told they were Scottish. and it was wonderful. And you do that, and you play geography in that queue. You found something of commonality with each other, and then you bonded. We do exactly the opposite in America. And I say this not as an opinion elite, not as someone from Washington, D.C. I say this as a pollster who has to listen to this crap. And all you have to do, you can see the videos. You can see this is a record. This is not what I wish it to be, but this is what is. We can't talk to each other anymore. We condemn each other now. We look for reasons to disagree and shut people out. People we've never met before. And when someone makes a comment about, well, I support Joe Biden because, oh, well, then you're just stupid. And that's a nice thing. Like calling someone stupid is a nice thing in America today. And I am really worried about this country that you're falling for the same type of division. And it's in your system. It's PMQs. It's the opposition. You actually call it that. But they're still the opposition. They're not the enemy. And we have come to see people as the enemy in America, and it scares the hell out of me.
I'm interested, when you did your work on British voters, you noted that fundamentally, regardless of what party people vote for, they share quite a lot of common values. And is that the same in the States? And have those values shifted along with the way that people, we talk about the kind of post-truth, people see different facts now. I mean, have American voters' values shifted, or is there still common ground there?
I'll give you an example. The number one value in this country is what?
Fairness.
That is the number one value, but what do they want more than anything else, even more than fairness? Trust. And that's the same in, not trust, trust. She only wished she had an extra T at the end of her name. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm writing it down, Frank. Sorry.
It's like, as I spew this stuff, we don't have that. The Democrats don't trust the Republicans. The Republicans don't trust the Democrats. We don't have that commonality that once existed. And you are still divided by class. You are still divided by culture. But you look at that as a difference rather than a division. And you don't seek to demonize people based on where you're from and who you are and where you grew up and where you went to school. So there is a difference. In the States, it takes, you know what I should have done is, and I can potentially give this to you, I have a video of about 20 minutes of the worst stuff that the networks I'm working for would not put on the air. Because you can't even hear people as they're yelling at each other and insulting and condemning each other for being a racist or a sexist or how dare you, or the woman up there, what was your word that you use? F-bomb. Yes. And they were saying this on live television. And so, and I'll use whatever numbers I need to do to make this case. I'll use whatever specific polling data to make this case that you are one election away from this. And it is not worth destroying your country for a single election. And I'm going to surprise you. I believe woke is a problem. I believe that what they're teaching university kids is really horrible. They're teaching them to hate your country. But that's one, they're teaching, and it's one election and it's one class. And I would say to you that if you choose to use woke as an election item, you'll probably win the next election, or you could win. And by the way, it may be so bad that maybe you won't. But woke is a very, very powerful tool. Who's a parent here? Who's a grandparent here? Is anyone a great-grandparent here? I was asked the question, define conservatives. And I said, it's about age. Labor is incredibly young. The average age of a conservative voter is deceased. And I'm looking around here and I see you, for example, look like you may not make it through the next 45 minutes. And now he sits up and pays attention. But I'm going to be watching you. The opinions of the young people in this country very much mirror the opinions of labor. 18 to 29-year-olds believe that Britain is not necessarily a great place, believe that Britain is inherently racist, believe that Britain should be about equality rather than meritocracy, and their grandparents don't agree with that. Their grandparents are what you all feel. And by the way, the strongest family relationship ever is not husband and wife. It's not brother and sister. It's not mother-daughter. It's grandparent-grandchild. They both have the same enemy. Okay, my previous group was smarter than this group. You don't understand what I'm saying, do you? Now she's pretending to nod her head. Yes, she understands. So I know that this is being simulcast, so I want to see how many people in the audience I can possibly insult. That age and that partisan break are so significant. And in America, it is not an age break. And it's not even a partisan break. It's simply a rejection of who we were, what we are, and where we may be going. And I know that you're depending on, even if you're hostile to America, you still look to us for leadership. Is Joe Biden a leader? How many of you, by show of hands, think Joe Biden's a leader? The guy's so old it takes him an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. He's so old, his favorite painting is The Last Supper. If you look carefully, it's the second waiter from the left. He's so old, the only time he doesn't have to pee is when he's actually peeing. I like that laugh from this guy over here. He calls himself a constitutionalist. It's because he was in the room when they wrote the document. And he's not been the right person to unify the country. Because instead of acting as he promised, he ran as Harry Truman. He has acted like FDR, and he's governed like Jimmy Carter. And by the way, if Hillary Clinton had been elected president, she would not have been our first female president. Jimmy Carter was our first female president. We have a challenge. We have a deficit of leadership. We have a challenge of social media. We have the problem of the mainstream media. And even in the business community, they're not stepping up to replace the lack of leadership from the other areas. So that's what makes me nervous.
I mean, we've talked a little bit about Trump, but I mean, how do you see his prospects going into 24? There was a period, let's say a year ago, where he was sort of as kind of a shoo-in for the Republican nomination. I mean, do you think that's still the case? Does he still have the same cachet he did a year and a half ago?
You may know this, but I was at the final public Trump event. It was a White House Christmas party on December 23rd, and they invited me to attend. And after a couple hours, I finally got the guts to ask him, what does the J in Donald J. Trump stand for? You know what he told me? Genius. So that's actually a joke. I told him that joke, and I was on Air Force One when I told him. And everybody sitting around laughed, and he says, wait a minute, I am a genius. That is not a joke. He no longer understands or sees the truth. And once again, I give you this warning, and you take this stuff really seriously, and I'm begging you, because I do the humor, because I don't want to think about how bad it is. And if you really get me going, you'll see me crack up. He doesn't care about the truth. He is not a victim, he's a perpetrator. He is not mistreated, he has mistreated others. And what he sees in others that he condemns, he actually portrays himself. I think very highly of Ivanka and Jared. There's some people in the administration that sought to challenge him. But Donald Trump has lost connection. He has lost connection with reality, and that is particularly dangerous in our country. He is the leading candidate for president on the Republican side, but Ron DeSantis is gaining and gaining and gaining on him. Trump could very well win the Republican nomination but not be reelected. But if you're willing to look the American people straight in the eye, and you're willing to tell them things that simply aren't true, and you get an audience of tens of millions of people, we ought to be afraid. I'm going to ask you, and I'm putting you on the spot, and I think you got a microphone back there, because I don't think you think it's that bad. Would you comment? I want to bring you in, Jerry. I want to bring you in on this, because I invite an alternative point of view. And all that I say is, it's not whether I like him or not. I'm responding to what I see and hear in my focus groups, in my polling, and all the public opinion. And this really does frighten me. Can you give him a microphone? Allow me this. Because this is the dean of journalism right there. He's right there.
I assume you're talking about me, Frank, but yes, thank you. I don't necessarily disagree with much of what you've said. I have some issues about the broader, your broader thesis that America is doomed, insofar as you subscribe to that, because I think economically speaking, I think actually we're entering a new era of American dominance, and I also think America has been more divided in the past. Go back to 1968. In 1968, as you well know, the country was at war. There were terrorist attacks domestically. There were major political assassinations. The country was incredibly divided. It looked as though it wouldn't survive. And then we had a decade of kind of that sort of division. And finally, thanks to Ronald Reagan particularly, it kind of emerged out the other side. But I don't disagree with you about Trump. I'm not sure, or at least I would say there's a paradox between the degree of, if you look at the collapse of great civilizations, it's usually economically led. They usually, you can go back to Rome, or you can look at the British Empire, or you can look at the Dutch Empire, or the Spanish, or any of these great empires. It is usually, without sort of taking too sort of structuralist a view, it is usually a case that economic decline precedes political collapse. In the United States, I think that's really hard to make the case that that's going on right now. We've seen the events of the last few weeks in the world. Look at the degree to which the US dominates world financial markets. What is it, 90% plus of FX trading is carried out in US dollars. 2/3 of the world's central bank reserves are in US dollars. 15 of the world's top 20 companies by market capitalization are American. The sense of doom that Americans had 10 years ago that China was going to overtake them and it was China's century, that has passed too. And I'm sure you pick that up a lot. I certainly do. In the US and indeed traveling around the world, there's no longer the confidence that China is going to supersede the United States. So I think you're right. I'm not fundamentally challenging you either on Trump or on the extent to which America's divided. I'm just puzzled by this paradox and this phenomenon of a country that is far and away, if you look at compared with Europe, as I say, compared with China, its economic prospects remain really, really robust, and yet, it has tremendous, political and cultural divisions.
So, Frank, my question leading on from Jerry's points there is, to what extent does being more affluent mitigate the kind of extreme political positions or very polarized political positions that you describe? If America suddenly goes through a new golden era, do you think these things somehow dissipate?
I don't think the problem is actually not the economy. The problem is social media, because we only collect information. You work for Fox News. What percentage of Fox News viewers voted Democrat in the last election? 2. What percent of MSNBC viewers voted Republican? 2. What percent of CNN viewers voted Republican? 5. But the problem is he asked the question, what percentage watch those news networks? And he's correct. But the problem is we're getting all of our information to affirm us rather than to inform us. So if you're a Democrat, you read the New York Times. If you're a Republican, you read the Wall Street Journal. And we don't know what the other side thinks. And sometimes there shouldn't be another side. But we don't understand, and we have different facts now, and that's the problem. Our facts, we now judge each other based on experiences without a shared experience. When Michael Jackson died, everyone tuned in to watch. When O.J. Simpson was found not guilty, everybody watched. We had these commonalities. And the only commonality we've actually had in the last 10 years is the death of the Queen. And you all did it here. And Donald Trump didn't even respect the death of John McCain, a legitimate war hero. And it was hours after he had died that he had the flags pulled up from half-mast. We can't even celebrate a war hero. And I am very sorry for that woman from Carnegie Mellon who wished the Queen a very painful death. I've been apologizing for her every day in every public forum. And I know that it was reported over here, and I know that the British were really resentful of what the New York Times wrote at the time. I am sorry. Most Americans did not feel the way that she did. She is horribly woke. The fact that she gets a chance she has every right to speak. And the idea that people would fire her is wrong. Because if we believe in freedom of speech, it's for everyone, particularly those we disagree with. But it's also inappropriate, and it's rude, and frankly, it's disgraceful. And fortunately, in social media, they erupted against her. But I'm sorry, because she did not represent the vast majority of American public opinion.
Let's just talk a little bit about woke. I mean, to what extent do you think that woke is a response to the divides, or to what extent is it fueling this partisanship that we see?
It's the same thing as Trump, which is it's the chicken or the egg. Both of these are happening at the same time. So the more angry they get, the more angry the Trump people get, the more angry those against Trump are, the more the academia and the media and Hollywood, the three areas that control how we think, academia, the media, and entertainment. Where are they? They're left, right? I wanted to make sure that you feel that I'm fair about this, because there'll be people who'll be watching that say, oh, you're just beating up on a few journalists. No, the media is hostile to a conservative point of view. Academia is hostile to a conservative point of view, and so is entertainment. Woke is a response to that, or the anti-woke is a response to that, as young people are afraid. They are afraid to speak up and be conservative in their classrooms because they feel like they're going to be punished. And I can't get academia to pay attention to that. People are afraid to speak out and offer their true point of view in the media. They won't endorse candidates. They won't engage because they're afraid that a Twitter mob will try to get them canceled. That isn't freedom of speech. That's not what your Magna Carta or our Constitution guarantees. Woke rose up because of a legitimate fear that people have that they can't even express their own points of view. Not hateful points of view, legitimate points of view. And coming from academia, I see this all the time. And I know my students are afraid. I know my students are nervous because if you're black, you're protected. If you're Latino, you're protected. If you're gay, you're protected. If you're transgender, you got a whole movement behind you. But God forbid if you're a Republican on campus. They're the ones who get beaten up. Jerry, am I wrong about that?
Jerry shook his head, just in case anyone's... I mean, Frank, how far down that path do you think... Obviously, you want to move to the UK, so presumably you think it's in a better place than the States, but how far down that path do you think we are, coming in from a sort of outside point of view?
I will find out personally over the next few months when I seek to do more academia here, how open people are to it. I know the opportunities I've got across the globe. Let's see if I have them here in the UK. There's a problem. If you read the Telegraph and you read the Guardian, are you getting the same news? So you are down that path here.
How important do you think it is? We talk, well, Liz Truss doesn't like the phrase actually, but we do talk about a special relationship between our countries. How important do you think it is that the British government cleaves tightly to America, whatever its internal problems?
I think it's important for the U.S. to cleave to Great Britain. I think it's important for us to show our support. It's not just about the smaller country attaching itself to the larger country. We have similar interests. We have similar instincts. We have a similar ideology. By the way, just for the record, who went to Oxford here? Raise your hands if you went to Oxford. I hated it. You all were so mean to me. In fact, get out. Wait a minute, you're still here. No, I mean it. Get out. I had the worst possible experience, and now I'm in love with the country. They really were a difficult bunch. Boris was there when I was there. Michael Gove was there. Simon Stevens, Jeremy Hunt, David Cameron came in.
They were all on the same debate team as well, weren't they?
Yeah, I took Boris on one trip with Simon Stevens. I took Michael Gove on the second year that we went out. And by the way, I don't care whether you love him or hate him. He's really talented. He's the best debater I've ever seen. Gove. Yeah. I got a chance to sit in when he was prepping Boris for PMQs. I bless you. Clearly not a patient of the NHS. I would never want to face Michael Gove in the debate. I've never seen someone so good at being prepared, and I would love to see Keir Starmer and Michael Gove go at each other just for 30 minutes.
Do you think, are there any other people who take your view of the states and are sort of deciding to up sticks? Is there any kind of movement towards that you've seen, or are you a bit of an outlier in that respect?
I'm an outlier, and the truth is I haven't done it. But I went on to You got a online flatsforsale.com, I think is what it's called, and I was looking. I haven't made the move, and in the end, I don't know what I will do. But I do know that I want to spend months here because this recharges me to go back into battle over there.
Yeah. If anyone does have a flat in Zone 1 that they want to sell to Frank, then just come up to him afterwards. Yeah?
Yes.
Given that there are so many of you here and the amount of questions we had yesterday, I'm going to turn it over to the floor a bit earlier than normal. I'll take questions in groups of 3.
I hate that. Because I can't remember.
Just get as many people as I'll repeat the questions, don't worry. Okay. Please keep your questions short, sort of 10, 20 seconds, and do not do any rambling statements or anything like that. My colleagues are coming around with the mics. Gentleman there with the glasses, Alice to your left.
And by the way, after you do the first 3 from down here,
and the lady in the red jacket in the front here, please.
We're going to do 3 from up there, and the woman who used that F-bomb, she's going to go first.
The only Biden fan in the room, I think. Sir?
I was really interested in what you had to say about Fox and CNN and MSNBC. NBC. I suspect you'll find that many people in this room get extremely irritated by the BBC. But do you think overall that it's a force for good? Because while we get irritated by it, when something like the Queen's funeral happens, we all watch it.
Okay, thank you. Gentleman over there.
I hate this system.
It's just to get as many as possible.
Yeah,
It's democracy.
my main question, because obviously I'm not American, I don't live there, but what happens in America impacts us. So I'm more interested in their foreign policy, because especially from where Indian that I am, we are very distrustful of America because they've proven to be an unreliable ally. Do you think that that will ever change anytime soon?
Okay. Is the US going to be an ally, reliable? And the lady at the front there. Yes.
Sophie de Schwartzberg-Gunter, I'd like your thoughts on Roe versus Wade and where America's going on that subject.
Okay, so Frank,
I'm going to do that one first.
do you think what's happening with Roe versus Wade in the Supreme Court? Because yesterday you mentioned that you had some stats about faith in institutions here in the UK. I wonder if the same thing is happening in the States, that people's faith in institutions as neutral arbiters of political questions.
4% of the British are now have more faith and trust in the institutions that run their country than they did 3 years ago. 4%. 50% have less trust and less faith and trust. In America, it is at an all-time low, going back to the late 1930s when Gallup started to ask the questions. We don't trust the Congress. We don't trust the White House. We don't trust the Supreme Court anymore. We don't trust our health service. We don't trust education and teachers, everything. The only thing in America that we trust, the military. And that's the same way here as well. Roe v. Wade is the most, I will not debate it. I usually don't answer questions on it because it's impossible to discuss. I'm going to be a pollster. 8% of Americans are pro-choice no matter what. 7% of Americans are pro-life no matter what. The other 85% are someplace in between. If you wanted to actually pick the midpoint, Americans would say that up through month 4 or month 5, a woman should have the right to have an abortion, except in the cases of rape, incest, or to save the life of the mother. And what have states done? They've chosen to deny those exclusions, or they've chosen to deny any right to an abortion, or chosen to make them always legal, which is what the Democrats try to do nationwide, that you cannot have limitation on it. That's not where we are. So the politicians are taking the most incredibly divisive issue and making it even more divisive, even more polarizing. It's a no-win. It's going to help the Democrats because they're, in the end, the public is closer to the Democratic position than the Republican position. I actually believe that Republicans will lose 1 Senate seat and half a dozen House seats because of the abortion issue.
Okay. And the first question to the gentleman over there was, do you think that for us, having a national broadcaster can be a positive thing because of these shared moments that you mentioned?
I'm not anti-BBC, and I've spent a lot of time over here, and I watch them for news. I will watch Sky. I will watch GB. But I will start with BBC. When I was a kid, they hired me when I was younger to do some work for them. And my father actually wanted to call them up and say to them, do not hire my son. He doesn't take you seriously enough. My father was over here during the World War II and the Korean War. And my dad felt that this was the most important news organization on the face of the planet. Obviously, things have changed. But you can challenge them. They're not the I don't know how to call it, oracle that they once were, but they're still important. And that's where people go to get news that matters. I don't have an issue with their slant. I appreciate their attempts to be ethical. There will be an individual reporter who may be difficult from time to time. I have issues with how they cover certain foreign policy situations because I don't think they present the full truth. But overall, these people are truly committed to the best kind of journalism, which you don't get on social media. I'd much rather people get their information from the BBC than from a website that has no accountability.
Apart from CapX.
And no responsibility. Yes, apart from them.
And the final question was a fairly broad foreign policy one, which is, can other countries rely on the US?
No, not in this administration. How many of you... Okay, the US left Afghanistan. By a show of hands, everyone, up there and down here, who thinks that the US left in a positive, proactive, successful way? Raise your hands. And everyone get your guns ready. Oh, you don't even have guns here, so throw stuff at people. We were an embarrassment. We abandoned them, and we abandoned you. And again, that's my apology number 2 for you all. The way we left was a disgrace. And I would say that to the president if I had the chance to do so. But what we have done in Ukraine, despite the right wing, and here's the weirdest thing of all, you know who actually hates the war the most, who is most pro-Putin and pro-Russia, is not the left. I keep saying it wrong. The most supportive of Putin is the right, not the left. We've got half a dozen or maybe a dozen congressmen who are against funding Ukraine, who keep saying that Putin is a great guy. And it was, I remind people, it was Donald Trump who said that Putin was incredibly smart and how smart this was for him to invade Ukraine. He hasn't said shit since then, has he? He still doesn't disavow what he said at the beginning of the war. The Ukrainians are the bravest people I have seen. They have fought for their independence. We should support them in every possible way. It is good for them, it is good for us, and it is good for the world community, for Ukraine to win and Russia to lose.
Okay, we've got time for another set of questions.
Up there.
The lady in white, I think you're just going to have to shout in due course. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Does that work? Okay, cool.
By the way, they can hear you in America right now.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. Some think that Trump was just the symbol for like the temperament of the country and has now become a very divisive symbol. Do you think we were always destined to go this direction and he was just the right candidate at the right time, or is there another way to go about this?
That is the question I get more than any other, and I've wobbled on it. I think that both are true, that we never would have developed the way that we did if Trump had not been a candidate at that moment, but Trump was able to be a candidate at that moment because of where we are as a country. I understand, and I say this to all of you conservatives, I know you want to win. Would you please empathize with people who cannot afford their electricity? Would you empathize with those who cannot afford the food that they're trying to purchase? If they see, and I know that this is heresy, and I'm going to upset people in the party right now, but if you're struggling, and we know 49% of this country struggles at least once a month to pay their bills, and if they see that money is going to the richest and most successful at a time when they themselves are struggling, they're going to get mad. You can argue, and I agree with most of your policies, but if those policies are communicated to help people like, stand up, no, him, turn around, That's your problem. That's who they think the policies are helping. I know they're not. I know they're helping the average individual. If you can stand up for a second. Yes. Turn around. This is who you want to help. That is who they think you're helping. And that's a problem. This is meant to be entertaining, but it's also meant to illustrate that Trump spoke for those people who had not been spoken for, and they loved him for it, and they will follow him to the ends of the earth. You won't have that problem in this country if you will speak for them, if they know that you're on their side, if they know that you're fighting for them. But I'll tell you, as of October 3rd, they don't know that. And that, more than anything else, is the reason why you have a 31-point deficit.
What do you think, to bring it right back to the news of the day, I mean, what do you think about the U-turn on the 45p rate? Do you think the public actually care about the kind of mechanics of U-turns versus what ends up in their back pocket?
So are my students from Radley here? Did you guys ever make it? I guess not. They were meeting with Michael Gove, so good for them. They're probably in a debate with him right now. They came this morning and they asked one of your cabinet ministers about the U-turn. That was the first question. They're using the media's language. When a student who's 16 years old asks, do you support this U-turn? Is that the right thing? I now know we're gone. It's gone. She's got a massive problem. But no, the actual U-turn doesn't matter. How old are you, by the way? Yeah. You're 19? Stand up. Give him a microphone. The most important person in this world is him. What's your name?
Owen.
Owen. Owen is about to cast his first vote. If you can win Owen over, you can be the next government.
I reckon he might vote Tory just looking at him.
You need to sell you. By the way, everyone's now looking at you. I don't want to make you nervous. But if you say the right thing, a whole lot of people are going to give you a lot of money. What concerns you the most about the conservatives? I don't want to know why you support them. What concerns you the most about them?
Policies for the wealthy and not the poor.
And why does that concern you? Put the microphone up.
Because the poorest in society need help at the current moment.
Are you leaning, would you, on your first vote conservative?
Yeah.
Okay, this is my proof. I'm serious. He's going to vote conservative, but he's afraid that policies for the rich could hurt the poor. You have to answer that concern because his generation, that is their number one concern. So we have to speak to them. We have to hear them and not reject them. Is anyone else here a first-time voter? We got 2 back there, 1 here, and 1 there. 5. 5 out of 75 or 100 people. Who's a first-time voter up there? I don't see any. 1 hand right there. So you got about 125 people. You got 5 of them will be first-time voters. It's not a good ratio.
Okay, we've got some more. There's a gentleman right next to Matthew there. We'll do one at a time because Frank hates the triple question format.
Luke Evans, MP for Bosworth. And Frank, thank you for sitting the Treasurer right next to me for my next campaign. I appreciate that. Very simply.
By the way, you know he's an MP because he stood up without me having to ask him to do so.
Is there room for nuance in our political debate in the public in the US or here in the UK?
And I'll do it for you, which is we will not always agree. But if we don't, I have the responsibility to tell you why I feel the way I do. If we disagree, you have the right to tell me why I'm wrong. And I have the responsibility to listen. Why can't you just do that? It is the easiest way. You know this, Mr. Treasurer. You know. I think you're the Treasurer. I think that's your title. You know that it's simple empathy to recognize this is why I go to an audience. I want to hear what you, I don't have to. I want to hear what you have to say. What was your majority?
26,500.
26,000? What are you doing here?
Listening to you.
Well, you're wasting your time. You should go out there. There's free food somewhere out there. But I want to say something to you all, because you're going to be seeing a lot of MPs with majorities of 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. Unless you fix this, they're not coming back. And it's something that for the first time in my conversations, and I do this for you because I don't want you to end up like America. I don't want you to create a 2020 situation where Democrats won the presidency, the House, this. They won everything. If you're going to fix it, you're going to fix it right now in the next 48 hours. If you leave here with the current perspective of the voters, you will not get a better chance. 48 hours to fix this. So you should, I know you guys drink like fish. I can't get to the elevator because I'm over at the Hyatt trying to get through you all because you're moving and all this. Tonight, instead of drinking, you should be working. And if this were my country, I would be working, and I would pass up the parties and actually get the job done, because you know what government's coming next if you fail. Well, if you fail, it's your own fault. That's my nuance.
Just to follow up on that, Frank, I mean, how important is, Luke talks about nuance, but how important is the way that politicians actually talk to and about each other to voters? Because my sense is from people who are not politicos, when they tune in, they see PMQs, they see something that's completely divorced from the kind of way they would speak to people in real life. You know, I remember someone I worked with going, to me it's just two posh blokes shouting at each other. Obviously it's not two blokes anymore, but what's your view on that and the way that politics is conducted?
You're exactly correct. And I can tell whether someone's a politician or not by how they answer a very simple question. If they use the word inflation, they're a politician. If they talk about affordability or that costs too much, I can't afford it, then they're a real person. And we asked the question, to give you statistics behind this, whom do you trust the most to give you information about the way life really is today? The number one person was an ordinary individual, 26%. I gave them the whole list of 20 people, 19 people. Dead last at 1% is a member of parliament. Dead last at 1%. So if you sound like a politician, you're screwed. And I'm looking at your shirt. You got a white collar, but that is one of the things they sometimes do in Britain is they wear the white. I've even tested how you dress. You don't have a white collar with a different color shirt, because that means you're saying something to people. It was just your landlord. And by the way, your constituency will appreciate polyester, so that's excellent for you. M&S? Oh,
He's fine.
I know, for a second I thought he said S&M, so.
He is Middle England, right there.
Whoa.
Can we have a lady at the back there? Hand up. Okay.
Thank you. The title is America Doomed? And you had people in the top saying it's divided and split, and conversations have been great. Do you think that America is heading for real trouble in civil war? We have heard that.
I don't believe that America's headed for civil war. I do believe that we will not be the same country that we have been if we can't talk to each other anymore. We have something called Thanksgiving. We now know that 1 out of 4 Thanksgiving dinners have blown up because of politics. We used to talk about this all the time when I was a kid. As I got older, it was verboten. And I believe that Jerry's correct about our economy, and we're lucky for that. But I'd say to you this, what happens to America if our economy goes the way of Great Britain? We already have political divisions. What happens if people actually can't make ends meet at the end of the week? And you've got 49% of trouble paying their bills. We've got 34% in trouble paying their bills. That's a lot of people. If that climbs over 40%, that could tilt it.
Can I ask, you mentioned when Michael Jackson died, but who now are unifying figures you might be able to speak to the entire American public? And you said the military is a trusted institution, but can you think of individuals, either celebrities or politicians or whatever it might be?
You're going to laugh at this, but Tom Hanks is one of. We actually have asked this question. Tom Hanks does very well. He can speak to the American people. Oprah used to be able to, although I got to imagine that Oprah would not be too popular here after Meghan Markle. You know, I got to do this. Meghan Markle, positive or negative? Raise your hands. Who says positive? The woman who said fuck.
It's the Biden fan.
Who says negative? I want everyone, let's do it one more time. Can you lower that camera so everyone can see it? One more time. Negative for Meghan Markle. I love this group.
I might be alone in just not really caring. But,
Good.
there we go. Lady right next to Matthew there.
And then we're going to do up there too.
Okay, we will go to the gallery. It really does look like a cage fight from here. Go ahead.
So Frank, you don't like Donald Trump and you don't like Joe Biden. Who would you like?
Good. I'm going to give you 6 people, and you can write them down. And tonight, no, not tonight, because you got other work to do. On your way back, on the trains that may or may not be working on Wednesday. It's ridiculous. Joe Manchin, Senator from West Virginia. Tim Scott, Senator from South Carolina. Michael Bennet, Senator from Colorado. Cory Booker, Senator, and I know this has a ring to it, Senator from New Jersey. And I missed one. Ben Sass, Senator from Nebraska. Mitch Landrieu, former mayor of New Orleans and head of Biden's infrastructure effort. These are 6 people who seek common ground, 6 people who have a heart as well as a head. Solution-oriented, compassionate, caring, 4 Democrats, but one's really conservative, 2 Republican. Any one of those 6 could lead our country. Any one of those 6. And I want someone with a heart, not just someone with a head, over the next 4 years, because we need to have something that brings us together.
Or Tom Hanks.
Or Kanye.
Now, I can't do Kanye, and I need someone who can complete a sentence.
Right. Okay. A gentleman just over there in the glasses with cufflinks.
With cufflinks, that's not a good sign.
It's a Tory thing.
What are your thoughts on Andrew Yang and his attempts to create a new party, which, if I recall correctly, I think it's called the Forward Party?
Yes, we actually did a test of that. I'm now jumping. My press release is going to come out in about 10 days. The Forward Party was the second worst name for a political party. I think the raving lunatic silly party that you guys have is the only. What's it called?
The Monster Raving Lunar Party.
Yes, they're nuts. And by the way, if you're sitting horizontal to me, you guys don't get to talk. That tells me a lot about what he has done, that he hasn't even bothered to ask people what they're looking for. The truth is, Problem Solvers is a better name. Unity Party is a better name. Anything that has coming together as its theme is far more supported than anything that's forward or future, because we got a problem right now. We can't focus on 10 years from now when we got a disaster going on right now. Someone up there.
Gentleman. Yeah.
Painting the picture of division and split, divisive being driven by the media. What's the solution? How do we get out of this and how do we get back to the middle ground?
So the question was, how do we get out of this division created somewhat by the media?
Okay, I'll give you an example. I'll give you my own example. I used to be an opponent of climate. I did not believe back. I got hired in 2000 to work for a number of companies, and I believed at the time that it wasn't real. And I realized by 2007 that I was wrong. And I started to work for the Environmental Defense Fund and some other organizations. And in 2009, I became very public about it. I made a mistake. I should not have done that. What is so hard about admitting you got something wrong? I think every journalist should be required to acknowledge where they told something, wrote something, presented something that turned out not to be true. And I think that every politician should offer that same kind of candor. We can't come together until we acknowledge that we're not right on everything. So that's number one. Number two is we need a much more accountable media. And that media, it has no role in being an advocate or an activist. That is not their role. And I think we have the responsibility to demand of them demand of them better. Number 3, and probably the most important of all, are there any teachers in this room? You're a teacher, ex-teacher. You need to go back. I believe that our education system is the single most important reason why we are failing right now, and the greatest potential success for our two countries. America would be so much better off if we taught American history, American culture, if we taught the truth about what happens, which is not all good. But this idea of adding ideology, critical race theory crap, we will be successful if we embody our young people the critical thinking, problem solving, and an understanding of civics. And if we don't do that, then everything else we do will fail.
So, make America Socratic again would be a great campaign.
And how many young people know the meaning of that word? That's exactly the point. This is exactly the point. And I want to compliment you on that. Because, by the way, you'd be a shitty politician, but you would be an amazing, amazing teacher. And that's what we need right now.
Thanks, Frank. Well, Alice, do you fancy being editor? Gentleman just right in front of me here, please.
You mentioned about sort of entertainment and its political leanings, and American entertainment is exported across the world. I think most of the media that most young people watch, and Netflix, for example, mass in the UK among young people, how much are you exporting that divide to us? And the more divided you become, does that mean Britain's going to become more divided, and can we stop that?
I think Donald Trump is more likely to export the divide. I think what the media exports is that America is not a great country. And yet, and this is actually very important, the most successful movies of all time are almost all pro-family, pro-tradition, pro-culture. I think almost all the movies that have done really well have positive messages. But a lot of these movies that go to other countries paint America as a pretty bad place. I'm not happy with its politics. I still think that at its potential, we are a wonderful light for the rest of the world. I just don't want them to copy our political system. And by the way, I feel the same way about Britain too. I feel at home here, and I thank you all for making me feel so welcome. And you guys sucked when I was at Oxford, but thank you for getting your act together in the last 40 years.
Frank's had a very warm welcome at the CPS.
Yes.
There's a lady in glasses just there. Alice, could you? Or Josh? Just there. Thank you.
Thank you. At the risk of being oversimplistic, do you think one of the problems America has, and I think Russia was probably falling into the same category, it's too big to govern and there's less community, because even though there's very different people live in the UK, we've all got a pretty good understanding of our lives across the board. Could you see a state actually succeeding and Texas or California separating?
Oh, if California wants to go, please go. I love that song, California, Here I Come. I want them to come up with a new version, California, Here I Go. America's governable with competent people, and the proof of that was Ronald Reagan. And by the way, the proof that conservatism has a heart is Ronald Reagan. We were the party of compassion. We were the party of kindness. We were the party of decency. And that is not what you hear out of too many people today. I didn't leave the Republican, this is not my line, but I didn't leave the Republican Party. The Republican Party left me. And I say this the same thing to you all. Be careful.
Gentleman right in the front row.
By the way, and so he doesn't know this, but never trust anyone with a beard.
Yeah.
And with a voice like that.
Hygiene becomes a problem as well. Why do the American conservatives keep failing to solve public health, public education? And don't they understand that this is actually a major sort of obstacle for conservative doctrine as a caring and as a nurturing society? And would you think that the federal system is now a liability in that the states themselves have other options and can actually concentrate voters, like in Georgia, which is actually a swing? Where do we go with that?
Well,
Education is state.
yes, and being over here, though, your NHS is not I know you love it.
They don't love it in this room, mate.
It's the most respected institution in the entire country after the royal family. But it is not a success. And I do not want to wait 2 years for a general practitioner or 11 months. I don't want to wait 2 years for an operation. That's not compassion. That's destruction. I know these numbers. It takes 17 months to get a heart transplant on average in this country. On average, when you are diagnosed as needing a heart transplant, you have 11 months to get one. Is that really a great... some of you have to be able to do the math. This is not a success. On education, the schools that I've seen, I'm going to see some by Toby Young that he put together. I think Radley is the best institution I have ever seen in terms of educating children. But it's an independent school. It's not the average school. What concerns me is that you're going to put dollar signs as the measurement. How many dollars or pounds goes into this as a determination of whether it's compassionate and successful. It's not how much you spend, it's how you spend it. And even more important than that, it's the outcome. If you're producing young people that are prepared for college, careers, and real life, you're succeeding. In America, we're not doing that right now, and we're failing, and we're spending more money than we have ever spent. So I agree with your question. I just don't think that we have the same policy perspectives. But I appreciate the question. Can you do one more from those guys over there?
You can have, there's a gentleman right at the end in a red tie.
What do you think Trump's approach to Russia would be?
Oh, I'm trying to come up with a joke and none comes to mind.
Don't release the tapes.
But let me give you something good about him. Russia would have never invaded if Donald Trump was president, because he's so batshit crazy that Putin would have been afraid of him. There is a reason why you want to be unstable or unpredictable, and we would not have had this problem right now. But this is a big but. Slowly, the world is coming to realize that Russia and China aren't allies, they're threats. And you add the third country, which is Iran, and I'm seeing in country after country, nations that align with them because they were willing to give out aid are suddenly realizing that that aid came with so many strings that they want no part of it. So there may be some good that comes out of it, although I have to tell you, I see the pictures of the destruction, and it breaks my heart every single day how much death and destruction Russia's bringing to Ukraine. And even if they win, in the end, an awful lot of people will have lost.
All right, we have one final question.
Is there an MP in the room? Is there another MP in the room? Because they would go first.
The gentleman there in the aisle, please, Josh.
I'm an ex-MP, does that?
That counts.
Okay.
Did you retire?
No, the electorate made that decision for me.
You need to counsel some. You should be doing.
I need to change my shirt, right?
No, you're fine. You don't have a tie on.
So it's not a question, it's a comment. So in my house, we have 3 generations. 15 years ago, we had 4 generations. My oldest 2 kids, 25, 23, have left social media. Went on holiday, my son didn't switch on his phone for 4 days. So just going back to your point, I was skeptical about that, but actually just thinking about it while you're talking, I think you're onto something there.
And I'm going to add one thing. I know we're out of time. Get ready to write this down. For those of you who are parents or grandparents, this is the order of how to have an impact on your children. 5 different things that you control in your life that'll make a difference whether your children are happy, healthy, and using the F word in public. Oh, my students are here. Hey, guys, wave. Guys, this is Radley. Show them a little love. Radley, guys, I talked about you. You missed it all, but it's clear that you guys got food and I didn't, so I hate you all. You guys gonna flunk. Number 1, how often do you have dinner with your children? And I say this to every MP. Nothing matters more than dinner with the children because that tells them that they matter. I don't care how much you're on the road. I don't care what your job is. If you're not having dinner with your children, you're putting them at risk. Number 2, how often do you check their homework? Because that teaches them that there are things that are more important in their life than just their physical nature. Checking their homework teaches them that the intellectual development is as important as physical development. Number 3, how often do you take them? This is your point. This is all in order. How often do you take them on a trip where you put away your cell phone and they put away theirs? And by the way, what you do if you're a guy is you simply go to the restroom, and as you're standing there, you respond to emails. But every time you take your phone out, and I've seen you do it in this conference, where parents bring their kids and they start to know, when you're with your children, that's all that matters is them. Put the phone away. Number 4, do they tell you the truth about where they are on Friday and Saturday nights, and do you demand the truth from them? Because if they're going to lie to you about that, they'll lie to you about anything. And if you let them lie to you, then you're just encouraging bad behavior. And finally, do they participate in the team sport? Because that teaches them that they have a responsibility to others, to their colleagues, not just to themselves. I love CPS. I've been here for 2 years now. I am so grateful for these opportunities. I feel like I'm blessed to have this. I've had the chance to interact with so many of you. I respect you, and most importantly, I'm grateful, because when I got here last year, I was running away from Tucker Carlson and all that Fox News crap, and I got a home here. And the way that you treated me over the last year as an outsider, as a foreigner, I wish every happiness on you, because you've given me that same kind of happiness. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Thank you, Frank. Cheers.